This is the Ask Faleskini podcast, where the modern economy is discussed from a skeptic's perspective. Mr. Faleskini helps you distinguish what is sustainable in our economy and what isn't. Not everything that glitters is gold, and not all mud is dirty. The podcaster Mr. Faleskini provides no-nonsense advice. He had it all, lost it all, went bankrupt multiple times, and is now attempting to come back from zero with sustainable growth. There are numerous coaches and preachers on the internet that preach about positive thinking and how life is all roses if you just care to see it that way. Well, Mr. Faleskini is definitely not one of them. We recommend you ask Faleskini to keep it real. He discusses the darker side of the current economic reality, the side that's more important for your personal and business finance. His first intention is to help you keep what you already have. Not to be a complete party pooper, Mr. Faleskini will also hint at the earning opportunities in the economy today. In order to please the almighty algorithm, please like, share, and subscribe. And now it's time to start taking notes. The mic goes to the podcaster, the one and only Mr. Faleskini.
Welcome to the Ask Faleskini podcast with a guest. I'm proud to present King from New York. King is a mindfulness and performance guide and lead from Peace founder, has empowered over 250 business owners and leaders worldwide to overcome self-doubt and performance barriers. His philosophy aligns with creating success without stress, emphasizing the enjoyment of achievements in the present. Let's jump right into it. The number one question I get from my audience is, why should someone hire a coach when they can just check YouTube videos and they can buy books? So King, please let us know why should people that want better achievements hire a coach?
Sure. So I think one of the ways that my coach put it, and also I learned, was that you have blind spots, right? Like, so if you're driving a car, like you think about you drive a car, whatever side of the road you're on or whatever, like where I'm at, we drive on the left side, but back from where I'm from, we drive on the right side. Anyhow, you have blind spots, right? Like there's certain areas that your mirrors can see and your mirror can give you but so much information, but at some point you've got to turn your head and like look over there before you get ready to change lanes so that you can make sure there's nothing in the blind spot. So as a coach, what I do, right? I can't speak for every coach, but hopefully you hope that every coach attempts to do this. As a coach, what I do is I sit in your blind spots and I read them to you, right? So that you can drive at a faster pace, so that you can perform better, and you just get these consistent readouts from an additional perspective. And then the other part about it that I'd like to add is there are things that I've found, at least in my experience coaching, that we often overlook, that we think doesn't have anything to do with success. And a lot of times we'll try to compartmentalize professional success and personal success and your relationship at home and your relationship at work and how you are outside versus how you are in the office and stuff like that. And it's not really compartmentalized like that. It's not really individual or separate like that. Who you are carries over. And an example I can give is, maybe a husband or a wife who goes out to work and they just had an argument with their husband or their wife that morning. They're going to go into the office and they're going to immediately be pissed off at their staff, right? They're going to try to shake it, or they're going to try to act like everything's okay and, hey, I had a good day. But they've got this argument running in their head and they're upset because somebody brought them something, and they could be totally fine, but they're like, I don't like this, change that, go bring this back, go do this or whatever. And that's because these things seep over from other areas of life. And so a lot of the times when you have a coach, one that at least is holistic, like that's what I do. I try to do holistic coaching. The goal is to make you present to your blind spots, but also point out to you the things that are affecting you from various different areas of life, whether it be this life, a past life, childhood trauma, financial trauma or issues and things like that. All of these different things affect people's ability to kind of like scale or grow, change careers, expand, and things of that nature. So that's why I think you need a coach, and why it's effective and more effective than going to YouTube or getting a book or something like that. Like you need somebody to listen to you, your unique, specific experience.
I really like your blind spot theory. Is that something that you learned in your own business, or is that something that you learned from a coach or mentor? How did you come about this, and how did you develop the whole blind spot theory?
Well, I actually got that in training. My first sort of like official training in coaching was in ontological coaching by an organization called Landmark Worldwide. And they're one of the foremost ontological coaching institutions in the world, I'd say. Um, they have they've had over like hundreds of thousands of students and stuff like that. Some people may be familiar with the Landmark Forum or things of that nature. They have an advanced leadership program called the Introduction Leaders Program. And in that program, one of the running jokes in that program, I took it back in maybe like 2005. One of the running jokes is that it's like putting yourself in a paper bag with yourself and having a fight with yourself for 6 months, right? Like, so like you're duking it out with yourself for 6 months straight, and you're just learning about yourself and going through all these different challenges. So through that training, and then going through that training and then coaching people afterwards, that's where the blind spot conversation came up. That's where they taught us about blind spots, communication, listening, different levels of listening, and really being able to listen to people from a place where they don't listen to themselves. And so I'll share this really quick. I shared this in like my social media a little while ago. There's typically three places of communication that you can listen to when you're listening to someone. The first thing is what they're saying. The second thing is their experience of what they're communicating about. And the third thing is their commitment, what they're committed to. So I'll give you an example. Let's just say if, you're doing interior design and they're like, oh, we're thinking that we want the blue colored drapes. Right? Let's just say you have a client doing that. You're trying to do interior design. Well, what are they saying? They're saying we're thinking that we want the blue colored drapes. That's what they're saying. But their experience is sort of like, I don't know. Is this going to go well with my place? Is it going to make me feel good? Am I going to be comfortable in this environment? Am I going to want to work here? How is it going to look in the daytime? How is it going to look at nighttime? What's the sunlight going to look like? Right? There's all these questions that's going on in their mind as they're saying that to you, who might be the salesperson or the owner or whatever. And ultimately, the third thing is their commitment, which is what you want to speak to when you're in sales. What they're committed to is having an environment that works for them to be effective and productive, right? And be comfortable. So when you're listening at that level, you can start to hear things and see things that people don't necessarily hear and see. And as a coach, that's how I have to listen. So somebody might say something to me and I hear what they're saying, but I also hear their experience. And more importantly, I hear what they're committed to. And then when I understand their experience and what they're committed to, I'm able to extract certain information and certain things that they may not be able to see themselves.
Okay. And what's your take on all the YouTube videos that are available on self-growth and different methods presented? And how would you rate them? Are they beneficial to clients, or are they just steering more confusion in their head?
I'd say they're beneficial to a degree because you're gonna, everybody has their own teacher, right? So there are some people who learn in different ways. There are people who I've tried to coach, but I can't get through to them for whatever reason, some level of relatability, or maybe I'm not using the language that they understand in the best way, or maybe we're just not in close enough proximity to each other to really be effective in that way. And then they'll go listen to somebody else who has more in authority in their mind, or who has more credentials, or who they feel resonates or that is more relatable. And then they'll get the information that I had been telling them for like 6 months from that person. And they'll say, you know what, I was watching this YouTube video and this person said this. And and I'm like, yeah, I've been telling you that for 6 months now. So that kind of thing happens. And it's okay, because we all have these moments where we have to sort of like have a level of I'd say, lucid ability, like where new ideas come in, because
Mhm.
we're sitting on a lot of thoughts and ideas that are filling our minds. We're dealing with stuff at home. We're dealing with things at work. So a lot of times we're just not listening. So if you listen to something on YouTube and that helps you get something more deeply and better that I've been trying to tell you, and now you understand and you can see it better, that's great. I think the challenge is when we start to think that that's the only thing that you need, right? The only thing you need is to go on YouTube and watch videos and stuff like that. There's a degree of needing something custom tailored, especially if you're the people that you serve and in your audience, Helsinki, it's ultra high net worth individuals, right? Like you're talking about people who have been through a degree of challenges, people who have gotten to a level of leadership. You are at a level of executorship, and you have a certain responsibility over people and responsibility to people. You need a committed listener. You need somebody who's listening to you in a way that maybe everybody else isn't listening to you. Because sometimes, even from a place of authority, people aren't willing to give you or say the certain things you need to hear because they don't want to like piss you off, right? Like they could get fired or they're going to get on your bad side, right? So they don't want to tell you the truth. But a coach, we're going to do that anyway. It's like, I'm not afraid of you. I got to tell you what's going on. Even if your ego gets combative, or even if you don't want to hear it, sometimes we have to tell you those things, and obviously do it in a compassionate and empathetic way, but still present to you the things that you need to see or hear that you may not be able to understand or realize that's impacting your performance or your effectiveness or you reaching your goals.
Okay, really good start to my next question.
Sure.
Entrepreneurs and high
Yeah.
performance individuals and people that are, let's say, extremely self aware, and they want to be self-sufficient and independent. They go and start their own business.
Mhm.
How does that work with coaches? Because a coach is someone that they will have to report to. The coach becomes their accountability partner. And they started their whole business and moved out of the job and everything just because they didn't want anyone to be responsible to, so that they're their own boss. So how do you solve this dilemma in your coaching practice?
Sure. The first thing that comes up is something I call the three types of success. And the first type of success is the one we know, which is the one that those people that you just mentioned are running away from. That success is the success that everybody wants for you, right? So you grow up, they're like, you should be this, you should be a doctor, you should be a lawyer, go to school, go to college, get a degree, get a job, et cetera, et cetera. Your friends want you to behave this way, your teachers want you to behave that way, your mom and dad wants this, brothers, sisters, whatever you got. The community around you has certain desires for you. That's type one success. Type two success is when you are in that stage, and it's born mostly out of rebellion, right? It's like, I'm not doing what you want me to do. I'm doing what I want to do. I'm my own person. I need to be independent. Yes, I'm going out and building my own business. I'm doing my own thing. I'm going to make it for myself. I'm going to build my success. Now, unfortunately, that's not the best type of success. It's not the most, when I say best, I don't mean like good or bad. I mean best as in most fulfilling, most stress-free, most peaceful type of success. And I've seen lots of people stay stuck in type two success on a sort of hamster wheel, meaning they'll build a business. And the reason why they're building that business is to prove themselves, right? I did that. I went out and I built a business trying to prove myself. I dealt with, and I still do deal with disability, like arthritis and stuff like that in most of my joints. And I built businesses and stuff like that because I remember in high school, I couldn't play sports. And I got into graphics and media and design and branding and all of that stuff prior to coaching because I wanted to compete. I wanted to get the girls, you know. So all of the sports guys, they were the sports jocks and they could play and stuff like that. And I said, okay, this was around the time where like, social media was starting to begin, like MySpace and Facebook is starting out and all these different things. So I was the guy that all the girls would come to design their MySpace pages and stuff like that. I'm the person that they would connect with to get these things done. And that was my way in. That was my way of coping with that challenges of not being able to play sports or compete with the sports people and, be in that crew. So that was my way of like having popularity. And it wasn't until maybe, I'm going to say, 8 to 10 years later after high school, that even though I had spent a lot of time learning marketing, discovering branding and all of this different stuff, that I woke up one day and I was just like, I'm not happy. I'm doing this for the wrong reasons. I'm making money. I was in New York City. I was running a pretty good branding agency at the time, and I was working with some nice name clients and getting a good deal flow and stuff like that. But I woke up and I wasn't happy, because what I was doing was type 2 success. I was trying to build the success at a rebellion for what everybody wanted for me. I was trying to prove myself to other people. And in me attempting to make that proving myself, the background idea, the sort of running conversation back here in the brain subconsciously was, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I got to prove that I deserve to be, loved. I deserve to be given attention. I deserve to be this. I deserve to have these things. So when you're in type 2 success, you end up in this cycle where you run out and you go try to build a business. You go try to, develop all these things and do all this different stuff and become successful. And then you end up screwing it up. You lose it all. That's what happens. You'll make some bad investments. You'll take risky investments that have a low upside, and you'll take a lot of risk. You'll pass on investments that have a high upside. And you're like, it's a good safe bet, but because it's a good safe bet and has a high upside, you'll pass on it because your subconscious is telling you that's not going to prove me. That's not going to help me prove my worth. And you'll pass on it. You'll go out and you'll do all types of things. You'll buy expensive cars and vehicles and, become the person. For guys, it's showing status through the ability to serve and protect. So we'll show that we buy cars and houses and things like that. And for women, it's the ability to show that she's fertile and she can procreate and be a good mate. So they start to go out and buy expensive bags and get boob jobs and all this different stuff with their money and their success and show off their power. And that hunt, that sort of search at type 2 success is that consistent cycle, because it's not going to become fulfilled until you start to really dive in deeper to yourself. And that's where the coaching comes in, right? You start to dive in deeper to yourself, start to learn who you are and really understand that you are enough and you don't have to prove your self-worth to anybody. That's when you begin to move into what I call type 3 success, which I feel is the best and the most peaceful, the most fulfilling success, which is the success that the universe wants for you, the success that God wants for you, the success that your higher self or your inner spirit wants for you. That's the stuff that you kind of like, little things that you enjoyed doing as a kid that you just forgot about and didn't like think about it anymore. You didn't even think you could make a career out of it because they asked you what you wanted to be when you grow up and you told them you wanted to be this, 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 and now they're trying to force you to do that. So you forgot about the stuff you love when you were like 5, right? Like those things start to come up again and you start to want to do things that really connect you to people and that have a greater impact and stuff like that. And that's the more peaceful success. So the way I deal with that in the coaching practice is in the conversations is to make clients privy to those types of success. And most likely when I'm sharing that, what I just shared with you, they'll identify where they are on that map. They'll identify whether they're in type 1, type 2, or type 3. And when they identify where they are, that's my opening to now say, okay, well, is that where you want to be? Because ultimately, yes, you went out to go be successful, prove this, create this, do all this different stuff and have independence. But is that all you want? Or do you actually want peace? Do you want legacy? Do you want long-term wealth? Do you want to have to keep rebuilding your success over and over again? Or do you want to do it just one time? And I think that's the core of how you have to kind of consider that if you're somebody in that position.
Thank you for all these insights. I have really 2 questions I need to ask regarding the 3 types of success. First one, can you jump directly into the first type of success, or you have to go through every step individually? So first you have to achieve type 1, then you have to achieve type 2, and only then you can go into type 3. And the second question is that age related? Because In my case, I was really successful until like 21, 24. I was in type 1 success. So I did everything what society expected of me. Then until like 40 years old, I was all about type 2 success. Of course, also with self-destruction and everything that you talked about. And only after 40, I started ticking my bucket list, as I said, and I started enjoying type 3 success. So is that also age related?
Okay, so let me answer the first one. And the way I think it's possible to jump from type 1 to type 3, but it's rare.
Mhm.
So in my discovery and research along myself, my friends, clients, um, I found that the way to type 3 success really only happens one of two ways. And that's either you're born into it, meaning your mom and dad have that mindset, the people who are raising you have that mindset and they're training you on it. And so it's just ingrained in who you are and it's easy to go into it. Or the universe kicks your ass and then you figure it out through struggling, through survival, and getting, you know, the proverbial shit kicked out of you by the universe. So, like, in terms of it just, taking over. And most of the people I know had to go through type 2 to get to type 3 only because of that stubborn drive to succeed and survive and prove and stuff like that that we believe is necessary. And I'll add something else to that, which I think is part of what I share with people and why I think that is. I think a lot of the times we think that we have to live the way that we tell stories. So the hero's journey, if you know anything about that, is a story framework that's embedded in everything. It's like all over society. It
Mhm.
started mostly in like spiritual and biblical texts and stuff like that, but it's in our movies, it's in our books, it's in our cartoons, it's in everything from childhood all the way up to adulthood. You can't get away from this sort of structure of story of that there has to be the call to adventure and then the breakdown and the breakthrough, finding the mentor and then going through the problems and the drama and then finally returning home and all this different stuff. And I think somehow we've forgotten that it's a story structure. And we tend to believe because we learn through like mirror neurons, right? Like we learn through what we see, we learn through what we, especially at a young age, we learn through what we see other people's doing. And I don't think there's anybody teaching that, like, hey, you actually have to separate the way you live from the way we tell stories. The storytelling is very entertaining and it's useful to keep our attention, but that's not what you're supposed to actually do, right? Like, you don't have to go through all of that. And then if you accept that idea that you don't have to go through all of that, then you could jump from type 1 to type 3 and skip over type 2, but it would take being coachable. It would take allowing people who've gone through it before you to actually give you that insight and for you to say, you know what, I'm going to trust you. And all right, I'm not going to do that. And that's one thing that I ended up doing, but I still went through it. I remember I was in that landmark training that I told you about, and there was a gentleman that was like, he had to be a good 35 to 40 years older than me. And he was like, this is the best leadership training I've ever experienced in my whole life anywhere in the world. And this guy was super successful by my standards where I was at the time and had been through myriads of bunch of different leadership training. So for him to say that that was the best leadership training, I thought to myself, I don't have to go anywhere else to get trained. like I was thinking about like taking other trainings and doing other things. And I said, okay, she said, this is the best one. This guy has been through a bunch of stuff. I do not need to go vetting other companies, finding other places, going through all this different stuff. He's probably been through, he's like been through like 25, 30, 40, 50 leadership programs at his point in age. And I said, okay, I'm not going anywhere else. I'm gonna stay here and study for the next 2.5, 3 years. And that's what I did. Simply just because I said, okay, somebody gave me that advice. And he didn't even give me that advice. He just said it to somebody else. And knowing who he was, I heard him. I overheard him. I said, okay, cool. Enough said. Right? Like that was it. I don't have to do anything else. So that's the answer to that one. I think you can jump, but you got to be really teachable and really coachable.
Okay.
And then
I
about the age part, Did you?
Sorry. Continue, and then I have another question.
Sure. And then about the age part, I think it's just about where you come from, how fast your parents kind of had it slated for you to leave the nest, um, stuff like that. When I was younger, we had dealt with housing issues and eviction from a really young age. So between 8 years old and 10 years old, I think we moved like 5 times in that period of time. And then another 10 years after that, by the time I got to like 18, 19, we had gotten evicted again because of some stuff that wasn't taken care of paperwork wise with the house and all that different stuff. So I had to learn fast how to take care of myself and go through certain things, especially dealing with the way the world's organized and things of that nature. So it happened for me at a faster pace than maybe most people it might happen for. So I think that it could happen faster, and it may be also age related, but I really think it has to do with your upbringing and how fast you were kind of kicked out of the nest.
Okay, thank you. So I think so. From my experience, it takes time. So usually people are in a certain let's say stage of their own evolution in time, and if most people are doing something when they're 40, 50 years old, it's hard that someone that's 20 years old can grasp the whole complexity of the situation without all the life experiences required to do that. What I notice in my coaching is that you talk about the story structure. What I notice in my coaching is that a lot of people have these movie narratives in their mind, and they would like to conduct business in a way that they saw in a movie or some series and so on. And these are serious people making millions, but they're still influenced by this movie narrative, how they should do it and who they should call and how it's done. And I do believe this is more and more common because I started noticing that in the last couple of years. And because before, if you wanted to start a business, you went to someone who did this business for like 20, 40 years. They were really seasoned experts, and they would explain how the business process works and everything. And now, especially in the US and also UK, we believe that everything can be started from zero. And if you have a great idea, you can skip all the years of experiences and just start doing whatever you want, any business. Because in the past, I know I'm conservative, so in the past you had to learn from the best, and it took like 5-10 years to learn the trade, whatever the trade was, even if in financial sector.
Sure.
Right now they're hiring. If you are an MBA, they will hire you for trader immediately. Like 25 years ago, when I started, it was like you would become a secretary to a trader for first 3 to 4 years,
Right.
and only then
Yeah.
they would send you to do all certification, and only then they will check if you are able to do it. So right now you can just jump, let's say, certifications, you can jump all experiences, and knowledge is more important than experiences. And I don't believe that is the case. I do believe they're equally important. In some cases, knowledge is more important. In some cases, experience is more important. What's your take on that?
It's the challenge with what we're dealing with today is the barriers of entry to a lot of things have dropped dramatically because of technology. So with the barriers of entry being so low for a lot of things, the markets get extremely saturated, and they get saturated with people who have not gone through that level of experience that you mentioned. Because the people who are in that experienced position, a lot of the times are busy being in that experienced position, making the stuff work. So they don't have time to be on the sort of like the front lines of, I'm going to say, trends or new movements and stuff like that, because they're in the trenches actually doing the work. They're doing the stuff. They're dealing with the clients and things of that nature. So what happens is there's this sort of like flood of newbies who will come into a market and saturate it with information and stuff like that, because it's just, there's tools. It's like right now, if you wanted to start a YouTube channel, you just open your phone. That's all you got to do. It's not substantial, but you have people like, say, Mr. Beast, who has been doing it for such a long time and is spending tons on his videos. He has an entire team of people who produce videos and they work on this stuff. You got like somebody like Alex Hormozy, who just popped up in the last few years, but again, spends a ton on his team and they work on this stuff. So typically sometimes there's like this idea of that if somebody has access to the resources and the tools that it takes to create something or to do something, that they can do it. And that's not necessarily true. Because you have access to the resources and you have access to the knowledge, that doesn't mean you have access to the skills and the talent, or that you've developed the skills, the talent, and the experience necessary to be effective. So those are different things. And, it's like anybody could shoot a movie nowadays, but that's not going to be a big screen film unless you work at it, you get connections, you build relationships, you go through a whole process that's necessary that industry requires to become on the big screen in the movie theaters distributed around the world, or whatever the case might be. That doesn't mean you can't distribute a movie around the world. You can make one today and post it on YouTube and it can be distributed internationally. Right? So, you have these two kind of juxtaposed positions where it's like, well, what is success to each individual, to each person? And I think that's what you're going to kind of bring it back to. It's like, well, what's your success? Because success could be 100,000 people watching a video. And that for me or you or somebody else might be what we call success. But for, Lionsgate, 100,000 people watching a video, that's like, what the hell happened? This is terrible. We need to sell millions of tickets, so that difference in the goals and the structures of that target that they're trying to meet, that whatever they call success, whatever they call that result that they're trying to hit, I think that's the thing that's going to determine how influential your wisdom or your experience is over the knowledge and the access to the tools or the resources to produce whatever outcome or deliverable you're trying to produce.
Thank you for all these great insights. Is there anything else you would like our listeners to take from this interview? Any quick tips or any trade secrets that you can share?
The number one thing, this is the number one thing I tell all of my clients, and it doesn't matter who it is. It's going to sound, to one's mind, it's going to sound like I'm being lecturing, or like I'm speaking like I'm a parent or a dad or a mom or whatever. But I need, if when I say it, I need them to hear it differently than that. Hear it like this is actually the most important thing that you could possibly ever do. Slow down. That's it. Just slow down. I have found clients solve problems just by slowing down, taking a few deep breaths, and it literally changes the response that they would have had to something. It literally changes the interaction they would have had with someone. And I've also watched people blow up entire deals off of split second gut reaction, sort of survival type of responses or reactions to things, and having the wrong information or being incorrectly informed or whatever the case might be, because they were in a rush to get something done. There was a mentor I had one time. He was like, look, if somebody's trying to rush you to do a deal, walk away from the table. They're like, oh, you got to sign this deal today or else we're going to do this or whatever. Or it's going to go away. Like, walk away from the table. Why? because they're rushing. And if they're rushing, something's wrong. Something's up.
Mhm.
There's no reason why they're in a rush like that if they're not trying to hide something from you, or something's going on, or they need something, they're in survival. And the question is, if somebody's doing that and you falter to it, you say yes to it, what you essentially do is you train them that it's okay for them to be like that with you in the future. Right? So when you slow down and you pace yourself, you begin to take control of the experience, you take control of the conversations, you take control of yourself, and you get yourself, if you slow down, take a few deep breaths, you get yourself back in control of your own mind, and you can shift out of survival into consciousness, like paying attention in a split second. And if you can do that, then you'll find that the decisions that you can make, you'll stop seeing things from up here, and then you'll take off the blinders, and now you can see from a wider field of view. And I think that's really important. That's all I would say, is slow down. And the reason that pops up for me now is because I'm studying a lot of stuff right now about like social media clips and shorts and people's attention spans and stuff like that. And I was watching somebody's thing the other day, and they're like, man, people's attention span is like down like literally 3 seconds. And in like advertising and media buying also, we hear this term a lot because you spend a lot more money on ads if your website loads slow. I don't know if you know that, but like if your website loads slow and you're running ads from Facebook or something like that, and it loads like in less than like 5 seconds, or actually it's 3 seconds for Facebook. If your first content load is like less than slower than 3 seconds, you'll actually get lower quality traffic, and you'll actually get like higher cost per acquisition, higher lead costs, and things of that nature. And I was also looking at the shorts thing. It's like, well, if you don't catch somebody's attention in the first 3 seconds, they're gonna swipe off and do something else. And I'm like, we're living in this really fast-paced world where it's like everything fast, everything now, gotta have it, go, go, go. And it goes back to what you just said about a movie, right? Everybody thinks it's a movie. Yeah, we watched the movie in 2 hours, but the thing took 2 years to shoot. You know what I mean? Like, and your mind doesn't remember that. Like, oh, as I'm watching this story, even the story itself, the storyline has taken place over like a couple of years, right? But we're watching it in 2 hours, so we think that it happened in a short period of time. So that's the thing I would say: just slow down. And if you want to be able to lead from a place of peace, then slow down, because peace is not. You don't really find peace in speed unless you're doing certain things, like I don't know, in space or something like that, like where like things are moving fast. But for you to slow down, breathe, take a few moments, like that. That's my biggest piece of advice. Number one tip. And I know it sounds, whatever, but if you can hear it and you get it and you actually practice it, you'll see incredible results.
King, where can our listeners and viewers reach you?
You can visit, it depends on like what you're trying to do. If you just want to check me out, you can visit King-A.J Olly. That's KAING AJ AOLLY .com. And that'll link to like all my social media or stuff like that. You can also just Google that. I own that namespace in terms of like all of my properties there. So when you Google King-A.J Olly, it'll pop up. And then also you can visit leadfrompeace.com if you'd like to become a part of the conversation about peaceful leadership. That's LEADFROMPEAC.com.
Okay, I will include links in the description below. Thank you, King, for being my guest tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Faleskini, for this outstanding podcast. And thank you for listening to the Ask Faleskini podcast until the end. Mr. Faleskini would love to hear your feedback in the comments. And don't forget, if you want to know, ask Faleskini or listen to the Ask Faleskini podcast. In order to please the almighty algorithm, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.